Hello, I'm Sean Edmunds, and today we're out on the water and we're going to walk you through how to use and set up your Simrad Autopilot. We're going to talk about the different controllers that you can have, whether it's your MFD, whether it's an AP4448, an IS42 instrument, or we're going to go into some of the steering levers we can add, some of the wireless remote controllers that we can add. We'll walk you through how to set it up, how to use it, and how to make sure you're safe on the water. So when we're talking about installing a Simrad Autopilot, the vessel really decides what the below decks components will be. Because if we're talking about outboards, we're going to work with virtual rudder feedback. If we've got fly-by-wire steering systems, we're working with the SG05 junction box. With some of the big battle wagons with power assist steering systems, all of that is decided. The only thing that customer or owner has the ability to decide is which controllers you're going to use. Whether it's an MFD, whether it's an AP4448 or IS42, what steering levers you can add, what wireless controllers you can add. The only controller that needs any type of setup is the WR10, the wireless remote. So the first thing you need to do is go in and disconnect power to the Bluetooth module, or basically disconnect it from the NMEA 2000 backbone. So we need to make sure that that's off. Then we're going to take the wireless remote, we're going to hold down the standby and the mode key for approximately 10 seconds, and we're looking for a single green flash. Once we see that single green flash, we're going to now power up the Bluetooth module or connect it back into the NMEA 2000 backbone. This will put the Bluetooth module into pairing mode and search for any devices that are available. That will be available for 60 seconds. So if it does find that remote, you will then see another green flash that will start happening every second on your WR10. At that point, you simply press the auto button and now you're paired to your base station. So the first autopilot controller we're going to talk about is any Simrad MFD. So whether it's a Go series, a Simrad NSS, or the Simrad NSO, we have the ability to control the autopilot directly from the display. So from the menu key, we can set it up where we have a full icon that can be used as a full page or can be set up in a custom split screen. So from there, we do have the ability for full control. So we can go in and change our modes, make turn patterns, do everything we need to do. We also have the ability, if we don't want a full palette or to take this palette into a split screen, we do always have the sidebar. So full function from the sidebar, you notice all the same features as we had from the dedicated panel. Course changing, engaging in and out of auto mode, and also from the MFD we have the wheel key, and we can set this up as always a first button push to go in and control our autopilot. So it'll always jump into standby or pull up the autopilot page when we hit it. The next two controllers I want to talk about are the AP44 and AP48. So the AP44 is a compact head. You notice it does contain the rotary knob in the center, and it has limited keys. So we have the standby, menu, mode, and auto key. So standby obviously does what it says. It takes the autopilot in and out of standby mode, or out of auto mode or nav mode, and puts it in standby mode, excuse me. The menu key is how we would go through the menu to set up the autopilot. So we can set the autopilot up from the MFD, or we can set it up from the AP44 and 48. Mode key, this is where we're going to jump between our auto, nav, no drift, and go into some of our steering patterns. And then we do have a dedicated auto button. So again, auto and standby, we can jump in and out real easy. Now, doesn't matter how many control units we have in the system, anytime you hit a standby button in any controller, it will always take the autopilot to standby, whether you're controlling it from that display or controller, or whether it's being controlled by another. When we go to the AP48, you're going to notice it's a little bit bigger screen, but it also adds some added buttons. So we get that 1 and 10 degree course changer, so we can simply press those buttons. And it also has the power button, so we can control brilliance, and it also has the X key, so kind of as a back key. So we've got an in and out key there with the power enter or the X back out key. As far as operations, both the AP44 and the AP48 work identically. There is no benefit to having one versus the other. The next setup I'm going to talk about is the OP12 and the IS42. We can have those two together and do the complete autopilot setup and have that as the only combination for a controller in the system. So if I do want that small dedicated keypad, that I can have that 1 in 10 degree course changer, still have that standby auto button and that mode key to get in there. With the instrument, it's a little more versatile than just an AP44 control head. It's the same screen size, but it also can be set up as a complete instrument. So you can set this system up that when I go into auto, nav, no drift, or any of the turn modes, the IS42 control head will automatically jump into an autopilot page. When I go to standby, it can bounce out and become a full instrument. So when I'm not running my autopilot, there's more information I can show on my screen. Now, I've also had some builders and some customers use this OP12 and they've put it around the boat. So they've had the MFD or they've had an AP44 or 48 on the boat to set up the system, but you can use as many as these around the boat just as a quick keypad. So if I'm going to set my system up for my MFD, but I still want a dedicated standby auto and course changer, I can put that on the dash by my throttles. I've also had some builders that have put it on the bottom of the T-tops. So the customer can sit in their seat, just put their hand up to the roof, make their changes to their autopilot, and not have to leave the seat. Next thing I want to talk about is the steering levers. So we have the QS80, the FU80, and the NFU80. The steering levers cannot set up the system. So you need an MFD or the AP44-48 or the IS42 with the OP12. So you set up the system, but these can be added, and again, you can add as many as you want, and you can put them wherever you'd like around the boat. They can be flush mounted, so in larger vessels, you'll see them out in wing stations. You may see them in captain's chairs so that the captain has easy access, or they might be on the dash somewhere just to give you easy access. When we talk about the FU80 or the follow-up lever, this lever allows you to move it up to the full rudder offset quickly and allows the rudder to take its time or its normal motion to swing and stop at that setting. So if I want to go to 20 degrees over on my rudder so I can get back on my throttles, I can just take that lever, slap it to 20, allow that movement from the pump to stop, and now I know my rudders will stay at 20 degrees if I'm trying to maneuver that vessel. The next one is the non-follow-up, or the NFU80, and that is more like a bang-bang control. So in standby mode, if I push it to one side, it will run the rudders to that side. So if I push it to port, it will run to port until I release that lever, and it will stop in the location it's at. Unlike the follow-up lever, if I put it back to 0, it will swing back to 0 and stop. With the non-follow-up lever, it runs as long as I'm holding it in that direction and stays where it's at when I release. So it is spring-loaded to bring that arm back to 0 or center point. The last lever we're going to talk about is the QS80. So that's our quick stick. So you notice it's got the lever sticking straight up. So that allows me in standby mode, if I want to do a non-follow-up control, I can move that to port or to starboard and it'll run the rudders until I release. The lever will snap back to center and the rudders will stop where they're at. They will not come back to 0. But if I slap that forward, it will automatically put the pilot into auto mode. If I slap or pull that backwards, it will automatically put the pilot into standby mode. So it's a nice quick feature that a lot of guys you'll see on armchairs or on those dashes for additional controls. But if you notice in all 3 levers, they all contain a display. This display will show the mode you're in, it will show your heading, and it will show your rudder feedback if you do have a vessel that has a rudder feedback in place and are not running virtual rudder feedback. You'll also notice that there's a command button, so I can go and take control of the autopilot from these levers. I can also use the buttons and hit the mode key and scroll through and select all the available modes just like I would from any other controller. So these make these very versatile levers that can be put around the boat. They'll connect right into the NMEA 2000 backbone, and again, following NMEA 2000 protocol, you can have quite a few of these around the boat. The last piece we're going to talk about is the WR10. So that is our wireless remote. That contains a wireless base station that plugs into the NMEA 2000 backbone, and then a remote that you can wear around your neck on a lanyard, or you have the ability to purchase a wrist strap. Okay, so with the WR10 wireless remote, you do standard come with the lanyard. The lanyard's nice if you're just holding it around your neck, but if you're doing anything where you're fishing or you're in heavy seas, the last thing you want is this thing smacking you in the face or in the middle of your gear when you're trying to get in your fish. So it does have the option to disconnect and clip on to a belt loop so that we can have it on our side so it's a little bit easier access. Or I'm also going to show you we do have available is our wrist strap. So for me, using the wrist strap, it's a lot easier to have it on my arm, not in my way. So now I can walk around with it, have it, and use it whenever I need it, but not be in any of my running gear or in the way. So now, once we have the pilot installed, we've followed NMEA 2000 requirements for installing all of the parts and pieces to the pilot. We've added all our controllers, everything on the backbone. The first thing we're going to end up doing is I'm going to show you through the MFD, but the same process can be done through the AP44 control head. I'm going to go in and do an auto source select. So I'm going to hit home, I'm going to go to settings, I'm going to scroll down to network, and then I'm going to go into sources, and I'm going to do auto select. What that does is that sets the network up for all of your available sources. So it's going to go out, it's going to go look for the autopilot controllers, it's going to look for the junction box, the feedbacks, and the compass for the autopilot system. So if you have an MFD, it will do everything in the system, not just the autopilot. If you're just installing an autopilot, it will just set up the parts and pieces for the autopilot. Now, when you do that, you're going to also want to make sure that we go into our chart page, and we're going to want to make sure we're navigating to a waypoint longer than a mile away, because we also want to set up our navigation. Because if we don't do that and try to navigate to a waypoint, the machine's not going to know who to listen to. So make sure you have that on when we're doing that setup. So I'm going to go back in there, network sources. Now, when you go through here, the first thing you want to look at is rudder feedback. Now you notice that there's two available rudder feedbacks right now because I've got a NAC 3 junction box in here. We've got virtual rudder feedback and we've got a selected rudder feedback. Well, I'm setting up an outboard motor, so what sometimes happens is some of our engine manufacturers do output a rudder reference sentence. Now it will also be blank, so there's nothing there, but when we do the auto source select, it will select that. So what we need to do is always make sure that we've selected virtual rudder feedback with an outboard or the NAC 3 rudder feedback if we're using an RF 300 or an RF 45X, or you might see RF 25. And that is our NMEA 2000 feedback. So select that if that's in the system. So we want to make sure that that's selected. And then you also want to go down and make sure for autopilot that we've got the junction box selected. And then what's the last piece of the puzzle is we want to make sure we've got a compass selected. A GS25 is good for radar overlay, but it's not allowed when we're talking about setting up and using it for an autopilot. So make sure we use a Precision 9, an HS60, HS70, or somebody else's compatible NMEA 2000 high-speed heading. So we want 10 hertz or greater. So once that's set up, we got our sources, our parts and pieces together. We're now ready to go in and set up the autopilot. So now the next thing I want to do is go in, Homes, Settings, and on an MFD we want to go to About, Support, and we want to check System for Updates because I want to make sure all the parts and pieces of my autopilot are up to date. Now guess what? it says that my controller is not up to date. So there is a software version out there available. Now, when we're talking about anything else like a NAC3 or an RF25 or a Precision 9 compass, we have the ability to update that from an MFD. When we're talking about the AP48, the AP44, or an IS42, we cannot update those directly from an MFD. So we have to do it through the display. So with an AP44, an AP48, or an IS42, you cannot upload the software from an MFD. We can do the Precision 9, we can do the NAC3 junction box, we can do an RF25 feedback. But from the MFD, we cannot load these. So on the back of those devices, there's your service port. So with a screwdriver or a coin, we can go ahead, unscrew that, and you're going to notice there's a USB port. So now we can load the software on the USB stick. Now, if we just have a Simrad Autopilot in the network, you can load onto that USB stick the control head software, the junction box software, the RF25 software, and the Precision 9 compass software, and upload all of those devices from the display. So again, like we said, it is only the AP44, but if possibly the Bluetooth module or maybe the NAC3 or something else was out of date from an MFD, we hit the home button, we will scroll down to storage. I have my micro SD card already in the machine with my software on it. I would go down and find whatever product I'm looking to upgrade. So my NAC3, I would hit upgrade, and now if it's not selected, select it, because I see it on the network, and then I'd hit start upgrade. It would go through the process, and then it would say finished. It would restart the box, and then you'd be able to see it on the network and then use it as needed. So because it's already upgraded, I am going to bounce out. So now that we've showed you how to update software on the MFD, if you need to upgrade the display or instrument software, or all you have is an autopilot with an AP44 48 on the vessel, you can do it from the display. So you simply hit menu, scroll down to system, scroll down to files, and then you see your USB storage device that we plugged into the back of the unit. And now we can go and grab whatever available file. So I wanted to upload the AP44, simply hit upgrade, OK, and it will go through the process of upgrading. Okay, so we've done the autopilot control head, but again, if you have, this is the only pilot on the boat that's a Simrad product, we can then go down and you can see we can upgrade the junction units, the Precision 9 compass, and any other NMEA 2000 device that is on the backbone. So now that we have everything up to date with software, we've got everything on the network, we can see it, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start setting up our autopilot. So home button, settings, autopilot. We're going to go into installation, and we're going to start with dockside commissioning. So you notice it calls up, says you need to hit a standby key. So that's a standby key on any one of our controllers. That is the wheel key on an MFD. Now, if you just have a Go 7 in the system, we do need to work on getting a standby key. So we might have to bring a display down, plug it in the network, hit standby if it's a NAC3 junction box. If it's a NAC2 junction box, we do have the ability to contact closure 2 wires on the power cord, and that's the same thing as a standby button. So I'm going to hit the standby, and you noticed OK now lights up. I hit OK, and now here we are. So the boat is a displacement or planing. So you got a deep V, big trawler, that's going to be a displacement type vessel. So those are usually very slow. they're very slow to correct or move around. They usually draw a lot of water. Or planing, we're talking about center consoles, we're talking about our big battle wagons, offshore boats. So we're going to set that up, and then you're going to set up the boat length. So we are 6. And then you're going to see, for us, since we are working on an outboard, you're going to see VRF calibration. If you do have a feedback, you're going to see rudder feedback calibration. Now there is a little difference. I'll talk to you about the rudder feedback calibration, but it is in the manual. With rudder feedback calibration, you're going to set the port limit with its value. So it's going to tell you to steer hard to starboard, then you can rotate the dial to set the actual number. So maybe you want 35 degrees to port and starboard. You'll rotate the dial till it says 35 degrees starboard. You'll hit OK, then it's going to tell you to go to port. You're going to set port at 35 degrees. You're going to hit OK, and it's going to tell you to go to center. Then after that, you're going to do a rudder test. So that would be that rudder test if we have a rudder feedback. And that's where it just naturally swings it back and forth and seeing the reaction with how much percentage of pump movement and how much percentage of rudder feedback movement. So for us, we don't have a feedback, so we don't really know where our motors are sitting, so we have to do it a little differently. So we're going to go into VRF calibration. So the first thing he's going to tell you is to center your rudder. So we're going to go ahead and use our wheel. We're going to center our rudder. We're going to hit next. When we hit next, we need to make sure we're watching our motors, because what's going to happen is it's going to engage some voltage to the pump. Now, you may not see any rudder movement. Now, we're looking for movement of the rudder that will steer the boat to starboard. So that means the back of the motor is moving to the starboard side, or the front of the motor is moving to the port side. So I didn't see any, so I'm going to say no. Keep looking. And for me, I did see some movement, so I'll see yes, but if you don't, you're going to hit no till you see that rudder move to make a starboard turn. Now, what is that doing? Every time I say no, it increases the voltage by 1/2 volt, and what we're looking for is that minimum value to start those motors moving. So now once I hit yes, now it says we're going to turn it max to starboard. So I'm going to run it max to starboard. I'm going to hit it to the end stop. And then what I like to do is just kind of kick it back just a little bit so that it's not vapor locked. I'll hit next. Now what it's going to tell me is press and hold that port button on the screen and keep holding it till the motors go all the way over to the port end stop. This is also another way to find out if you've done that moving to starboard correctly. Because if you push that and it keeps going into the end stop, you've done it wrong. You need to make those motors move the opposite direction, so you're going to need to start that VRF calibration all over again. So now I'm going to press and hold. Those motors are going to slowly slide over from starboard to full port, and I'll just keep holding it, and eventually we'll get to our end stop. Once it gets to the end stop, I'll release. And what you'll notice is those motors will slowly start moving back towards center. Sometimes if you held it too long, they may vapor lock, so just again, kick that helm just a little bit, you'll see them moving back. They may never make it back directly to center, but you want to make sure the movement goes back towards center. Then we hit close, and we're done. So now we've done our dockside settings. Go back into installation, and now we're going to talk about sea trial settings. Now before we get out on the water and start doing things, we need to set up our transition speed. This is the speed that the vessel starts to lift and get up on plane, because we said we're a planing boat. So we want to make sure we set that correctly, because in the autopilot we have 2 steering parameters, a high speed and a low speed. So when do we change from that low speed parameter to go to that high speed parameter? Why do we have 2 parameters? When you're out on your boat and you're just trolling, how many turns of the wheel does it take to make a 20-degree course change versus when you're up on plane? There's a lot less turns of that wheel to get that 20-degree course change. So we want to make sure that we have those 2 parameters set up properly, so that again, you're not oversteering when you're on high speed. So again, we simply set that in, make our changes, set OK. So within Autopilot, before we set up our dockside and sea trial settings, we need to first calibrate the compass. We calibrate the compass to take out any magnetic deviation that might be on the boat so that we can get a correct compass heading 360 degrees. So we're going to go into the home button, we go into settings. This time we're going down to network and into device list. Now this is showing everything on the NMEA 2000 backbone, so we're going to go find our compass. For this vessel, it's just an RC42. For other vessels, you might find the new Precision 9. So we select the compass, and then we go down to Calibrate. When we open up Calibrate, now what we're going to do is take the boat into a sweeping starboard turn. We want our turn rate to be about 2 to 3 degrees, and we can actually see our rate of turn on the screen. So as we start making that turn and get it set up for that 2 to 3 degrees, at that point, we will now hit Calibrate and just keep the continuous turn for approximately 450 to 600 degrees, and it'll tell you when it's finished. And that's taking all the deviation out of the compass. So now you can see we've completed our calibration. It says OK. So now what we're going to do is we're going to back out, and the next thing we're going to look at is configure. When we go into configure, the main thing we want to look at right now is our local field percentage. That's telling you what percentage of the compass they had an error and had to correct. So in order to use the compass with the Simrad Autopilot, we want to see that number below 30. The lower the number, the better the calibration. So if you run into a problem where it does exceed 30, you need to think about moving the compass, or check and see that somebody didn't put a steel or magnetic object around it. Take into account speakers, pumps, stuff like that will affect that location. But once you've got that compass calibrated, now we can go in and do our dockside and sea trial settings. So once we've finished the dockside settings and we've got our check mark showing that we've got our outboard set and we've got the VRF calibration completed, we've went into sea trial, we've set up our transition speed, now we're going to do the auto tune. Auto tune is where the pilot is trying to learn the vessel. So we're going to take the boat up to about 10 knots, we're going to hit auto tune, and it's going to start doing some S-ing. And what it'll do is put different variances of time and motor percentage to see how the compass reacts as it's doing these S's. And then when it does come to a completion, it'll say that it's complete and you're ready to try it and see how those settings work out. All right, now that we got the boat up to 10 knots, we've got our VRF calibration completed, our boat type is correct, we've set in our transition speed, now we auto tune. So yes, we want to go into auto tune parameters, and now the pilot will take over and start doing the S's as it adds rudder and sees what the reaction is from the vessel. As auto tune continues, you'll notice that it starts out with some large S-turns, and when we get slowly towards the end, those S-turns will start slowing down and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Until you get auto tune complete. Now you can throttle back, hit close. Now at this point, we're going to go and start testing those parameter sets. So remember, we got our transition speed, so we have 2 sets to test. So we'll take the boat, we'll put it at a slow cruise speed. If we're fishing, maybe our trolling speed. And then what we're going to do is put the autopilot into auto mode. And at this point, we're now watching what the actual compass versus the set heading is doing. What you want to do is see it to settle down within a couple degrees depending on sea conditions, current, wind, people moving around the boat. It may blow off and then come back. But overall, you should see it within a couple degrees, kind of like what we're showing here. You notice we're not blown off by much. It's immediately coming back on course. To me, that's telling me that these parameters are pretty strong. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to crank in a 30 to 70 degree course change. And what we're looking for is a turn to look like the inside of your thumb and your forefinger. And this is, we're checking the counter rudder performance. So as you watch your wake line and as it comes around, you want to make sure that it makes that type of turn. If at the end it comes around and it makes a J hook, means our counter rudder is too low. If it makes a turn and cuts it like stairs, means our counter rudder is too high. So these are settings that we'll walk you into and show you how to make those adjustments if need be. But again, looking at my wake, this thing came around, stopped really, really close to my desired heading, and now it's getting me back on, and it's going to hold me just fine. Now the next thing we need to check is our high speed setting. So we've up over our 15 that we had set for our transition. We're going to drop it back in auto, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did at our slow speed. We want to look at our actual versus our desired, and we want to see that they stay nice and close. And again, for this vessel, it looks like they're just about spot on. Now, if we're running in low or high speed and the boat is doing long drawn out S's, that means our rudder is too low. If it's sharp, short S's, that means our rudder is too high. So I'm going to slow us back down, and I'm going to show you where you would make those adjustments. So home, settings, we're going to go back into autopilot and automatic steering. And you can do this while you're in auto mode. And I suggest you do so that you can see the reaction after you make your settings change. So high speed, you've got rudder and counter rudder. That's what we talked about. So rudder is what puts you into a turn. Counter rudder is what takes you out of a turn. So if you're doing that short, sharp S's or that long, drawn out S's, that's your rudder setting. When you make a turn and you don't see that nice rounded turn, that's your counter rudder settings. But again, you notice we have low and high speed. So here's where you would make changes if you need to. You would go in, you would make an adjustment. Do not make drastic adjustments. Make them slow, and then after you do and you save it, again, look at your wake line or go back and look at your desired versus your actual. And make sure and see if they're coming together better. See if your wake is looking a lot smoother. If not, if it's going the opposite direction, then you're going to obviously send those settings the opposite way. Thank you for joining me reviewing the setup for Simrad Autopilot. Hopefully this helps you so that you can set up and use your autopilot for whatever condition you're using it in, whether you just need a second mate on the boat, whether you want to go out fishing and follow contours, or whether you just want to navigate to a waypoint or route. For any additional questions or information, please go to simrad-yachting.com. This video will also be available on the Simrad Live site so that you can come back to it at any time and review all the setups that we went through.